episode of Constructive Criticism. I am your host, Spencer Howland, and I am joined by my co-hosts today. Mason Clark once took third at F&M.
Two-time babies. Two-time
third place.
Easy.
And
is that the same as sixth place?
Michael, you
no,
know what?
It's way better than that. He took third twice. It's like the same as like 1.5 place.
Yeah, it's basically
catch up, Silver Pro Michael Hinderrocker.
Yeah, I know the grind's hard and you can't play F&M, or maybe you're just scared.
I just can't count.
Oh, well, that makes Magic really hard, Michael. Is it hard?
It is surprising how badly I count.
I think you might be a gold pro if we can get you some like basic math lessons. Maybe when Maxwell gets to that point, you can take classes with him, and then we'll just get you right to gold.
You know, Speaking of people who can help you with math, you don't need to do a lot of it to figure out that the prices at Oasis games are awesome. You can check them out at mtgoasis.com. You can get 15% off of your first order by using the code CCMTG at checkout, and you can get 4% off of every order by using the code Would That Be Good? No spaces. Let them know that we sent you. You know, Oasis is an amazing sponsor. We really appreciate them. If they don't have what you need, and maybe you're looking for steel product numbers, check out Fusion Gaming from our sponsor over at the Mana Base. Check them out at Fusion Gaming. You know, we really appreciate everything from both of our sponsors. You know, whether you want to watch Nikichu slay Mason or whether you want to buy some awesome cards from Oasis, both of our sponsors are super awesome. Check them out. If you want to support the podcast directly, you can go to patreon.com/ccmtg to become a patron of this show. Every dollar is appreciated. We do this show for free, but everything that you can contribute means the world to us. So check that out at patreon.com/ccmtg to help us out. It really does mean the world to us. So. All right, should we get right into this, guys?
Boom. Let's do it.
Well, before we do, don't forget to check out the rest of our network, because I missed this part. Limited Time Only and Common Knowledge are two other podcasts on this network where you can get better Magic the Gathering with a focus on limited and pauper play. So check them out. We do have one thing before I get too far into this. We are matching the first $100 donated to Proving Combatants, a podcast by Chantel, Autumn, Sarah,
Teresa,
and Teresa. Thank you so much.
I
was like, I know I'm gonna mess this up, but we are matching the first $100 donated to them to get Autumn the English National Championship to GP Las Vegas for them. SEG premium writer. Like we want to help them out, get them over there, get her over there to throw a huge welcoming party for Autumn. So we're donating the first $100 to check them out at Mason. What is their Patreon?
It's at Proving Combatants at patreon.com. I was about to say, I just literally finished recording their episode. Normally we do CC on Monday. We're doing it on Tuesday this week. But yeah, they have great rewards on the Patreon, a lot like us. They do a Patreon only episode where that's actually where you get me if you want that kind of content. So if you want me, you got to get Patreon only. But we have an hour-long Patreon only episode this week. So lots of crazy stuff. You can go check out the site. Thing's awesome. Autumn keeps killing it. She has a GP she's going to play next week, so at this rate she's going to win the GP, then talk about it on the podcast. So now's a good time to get on the ground floor. Yeah,
and we want to give a special shout out to our newest patron this week, Micah B. Thank you so much, Micah. It means the world to us that you support us. Thank you to all of our patrons. If you are a patron of $5 or more per episode, you get access to the Deck Doctor, you get access to the Constructive Critics group, and at $10 or more, you get access to the monthly Google Hangout. So thank you so much for that. Let's go right into our Patreon question for the week. Mason, did you go ahead and grab that for me?
Sure. Give me 1 second as I pull it up on my phone here. Our Patreon,
isn't it on your screen?
Yeah, well, I was pulling it up to read it because I can't quite read it on my phone from on the phone. Yeah,
that's fair.
Sit back
that's
so
fair.
I'm not super loud.
Yeah, just sit back like this. Yeah.
Yeah, easy. So our Patreon question is, when do you think it's right to play Shivan Fire, Magma Spray, or Shock at the current standard format?
Yeah, this was actually kind of a combination of a few people, and I really wanted to talk about this topic, Michael, because I have probably a different opinion than most people. So I'd like to kind of go around the room. Michael, why don't you go first? When do you play Shock versus Shivan Fire versus Magma Spray in your main deck in current standard?
Well, I think that, to me, Shivan Fire and Magma Spray are probably both... Shivan Fire and Magma Spray are both cards where I don't necessarily want to play them in an aggressive deck. I'm looking to play them in a deck that is using them to control the board, and whether I'm more interested in Shivan Fire or Magma Spray would probably come down mostly to the number of Scrap Heap Scroungers being played and how comfortable I am against that card. Shock, I think, fits better in aggressive shells, where being able to go face is like a real thing.
Yeah, so one of the things about Shock for me is, it only being 2 damage for 1 mana means that I have to be pretty confident that that's what I want to be doing, meaning that I'm probably an all-out aggressive deck. And then for me, most of my decks right now are 2 Shivan Fire main, 2 Magma Spray in the side, with some number of Chandra's Defeat in the side. And for me, the reason for that is, while I do think that Scrap Heap Scrounger is on the uptick, most of the decks that I'm playing against, like, I have a better long game than the Scrap Heap Scrounger long game anyway. So it kind of depends on, 1, what is the number of Scrap Heap Scroungers? And for me, 2, what does my long game look like versus a Scrap Heap Scrounger long game? What about you, Mason?
So yeah, well, you've been playing ramp decks, right? I just wanted to ask that question recently, right?
So I have been playing Green-Red Dinosaurs,
okay.
Bant, Green-Red Ramp, and Jund Ramp.
Okay, yeah. I wanted to make sure that you weren't just playing monsters when you're playing Shivan Fire. Yeah, I agree.
Well, I think that if I'm playing monsters, I am main decking Shivan Fire over Magma Spray.
Right. I think that's fair, but I was thinking, I wanted to make sure, because in my head I saw you post the ramp decks.
Yo, sure.
Talking in that context as well. So I was just trying to make sure. Yeah. Yeah, so for me, I think I agree with you two on if I'm playing Magma Spray, I normally more of like a controlling thing out of the sideboard. Hit Scroungers and sometimes snag like a Combat Celebrant out of Blue-Red Godfarer's Gift or the new Mono-Red Godfarer's Gift decks to keep their graveyard count kind of low. One thing I wanted to ask you two about, though, is what about out of like a Mono-Red deck where maybe you do want the Shock, you want like the Magma Spray type card to control the board early in some matchups like the Mirror, but you want the damage to go face?
I think in most of those situations, like, I'm personally going like either 3 or 4 Shocks main deck and then 1 Magma Spray in the main, but I can see sideboarding Magma Spray in certain types of matchups for those mono red decks. But overall, it's pretty hard to convince me that, like, if I'm like, 10 to 12 1-drops, that I would rather have Magma Spray than Shock.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Yeah, I figured as much, but I didn't know if you guys valued the utility of exiling. I guess I think where it really matters.
Yeah,
like if you so think rare about
that
if you think
better.
Oh yeah, yes, and I think the thing that you have to think about is like, Michael talks about like the number of Scrap Heap Scroungers, right? And what? Well,
I mean, sometimes you snag it. I mean, I just was trying to think of cards Magma Spray is good against. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Continue.
No, you're fine. I think that when we did I can't remember what episode it was. Like, I've been off the show for so many weeks, but I talked about how like Burst Lightning is one of my favorite Magic cards of all time, and the reason is really for mid-range decks for me. Like, obviously that card is quite good in aggro decks because you get to just say like, all right, well, if I flood out, like, I'm just going to do you 4 damage in the late game, and they did a good job of like saying like, no, we're not just going to give that to aggro decks, and so they make you think about it. But like, how often does that exile effect really matter for you when you have a good late game, right? And a lot of these mid-range decks, they're trying to get in the mindset of like this mid game, and you can increase your win percentage by including Magma Spray in your sideboard. But overall, for main deck cards, I think Shivan Fire just does a better job. Being able to kill, trade mana efficiency for things like Glorybringer, all the way to like being early removal for just a 1-drop or a 2-drop. I think it just does a better job. And right now, like, I don't see a compelling reason to be including a lot of Magma Sprays in my main decks.
The Shivan Fires also work better in multiples, right? Like, if there's a Lyra on the other side of the board, it's like, I need 3 Magma Sprays. But with the Shivan Fires, you're like, I can use a Cake Shivan Fire and a normal one, so.
Michael, what were you saying?
No, I was just saying that I'm on the same page there.
Yeah, and that could obviously change, right? Like, if there's, like, a ton of Champion of Wits and a ton of Scrap Heap Scrounger, and like games are going long where like my kicked Shivan Fires are actually just better as like exiling those kind of cards, that's the format being different. But like right now, this is where I'm at.
Right, I agree with that completely.
So, Cool. That was a great Patreon question. I'm really glad we got to answer that. Let's go on to a hashtag always improving. Hashtag always improving is the point of this podcast. We believe if we're not getting better, we're getting worse. We want to be doing what we can to be getting better all the time. So, Michael, you just took 11th at the GP. What have you done to be getting better at Magic this week?
Oh, man. We somehow caught a flight where we woke up at 4:30 a.m. for a 5:09 flight. And then Matt and Alex came and picked me up, and we drove to the airport, and we got through security, and we somehow boarded the plane on time.
Yeah, I saw your extreme luck in that.
Yeah, it was, a powerful... It was mostly, I think, Alex on the refuse to lose / refuse to slap at red lights plan.
Sure.
But managed to get there, and then we lost round 1 and bounced back, and it was just nice to put up a pretty decent finish and fun to play with those guys.
Cool. What about you, Mason?
So I've started preparing for PBDQs because, I'm not like Michael and I just get to go to RPTQs because I'm, Silver Pro. But, jokes aside, I was looking at like the PTQ results and I was seeing like a lot of green-white fair deck and stuff like that and a little bit of control from Autumn, improving combatants and stuff like that. So I was eating some sushi and I was like, man, I bet Vampires is pretty good right now. And so I thought about it on my way home and I was like, that deck's probably not that great. And I was like, whatever, I'm just going to play in a league. And then I 5-0'd with it, and then I threw away a 4-1. And it was just nice to, like, think about stuff and be like, well, I think this is pretty good, and just be willing to try it. And part of that is the access to mana traders, which let me just play whatever decks I want. But it was nice to, think about something and then get rewarded for, making a call. That's how I helped. Spencer, what about you?
Oh, man. I mean, I've been doing this, as anybody can see. As Michael said, I look like I'm in a kill room, but...
I was going to say, you setting up for murders, or...
No, I had a crazy last couple weeks. So, my boss at my job quit. And my job is to do the stuff my boss didn't have time for. So now my job is to do the stuff my boss didn't have time for, and my boss's job. And... plus, I moved to a new awesome location. I'm in the basement right now, which, by the way, I love. We're going to get, like, a backdrop and stuff, so, like, you don't have to worry about this kill room for very long. Might go murder people back here later. But one of the things that these last 2 weeks have taught me is just... first of all, I love doing the podcast. I love playing Magic. And I think that there is a certain amount of... what is the word I'm looking for? Oftentimes we put unrealistic expectations on ourselves in Magic, and I've been guilty of that a lot. And doing this podcast for 4 years plus, and doing the things that we've done, I haven't had time for myself. And taking these 2 weeks off has been a real blessing in my life. My wife is very grateful for the time that I spent doing other things. I'm really happy with where I'm at, and I have this beautiful new home. I have this awesome family upstairs, and this amazing job, and it all sits around these amazing listeners that we have and this amazing content that we create. And I'm just kind of grateful, and looking back, I started making plans for the RPTQ today. Did some streaming today around MTG Arena. And the thing that I really learned in the last 2 weeks is that I just love Magic the Gathering. And I need to get back to loving Magic the Gathering. Because pretty often Magic feels like a job for me. I don't know if Michael feels this way or if Mason feels this way. But when I love Magic the Gathering, Magic's really fun. And I just kind of want to get back to that.
Yeah, I think that trying to figure out what you enjoy about Magic and sort of continuing to work on those aspects is definitely valuable and definitely can help you keep going when you... So it helps kind of remind you why you spend so much time playing this game.
Yeah. Let's go on to our deck doctor, though. I guess I didn't actually wrap this up. This week I improved by realizing that I love this game, and that is something that sometimes you forget. So hopefully I can do better remembering that in the future. So Mason, why don't you go ahead and read our deck doctor for us?
All right, our deck doctor has 4 Dauntless Bodyguard, 4 Sky Marcher Aspirant, 4 Dorn Pouncer, 2 Knight of Grace, 4 Benalish Marshal, 2 Angel Inventions, 1 Legion's Landing, 2 Pride of the Conqueror, 3 Thopter Arrest, 1 Gideon of the Trials, 4 History of Benalia, I believe is how you say that, 1 Aethersphere Harvester, 4 Ceram's Expertise, 2 Angel Inventions, and then for the lands we have 20 Plains, 4 Shepherd Dunes. Then our sideboard is 1 Authority, 2 Baffling Ends, 2 Pride of the Conquerors, 1 Ixalan's Binding, 4 Gideon's Intervention, 1 Angel Invention, 1 Lyra Dusk Bringer, 1 Dusk Dawn, 1 Silent Gravestone, and 1 Aethersphere Harvester.
Yeah, so this is a 20 land deck, and that's where
it's 4 Shepherd Dunes.
Oh, 4 Shepherd Dunes. Oh, that makes way more sense. Okay, woo!
It's just like you can never cast your spells. I can't get on board.
I can delete the first thing in my bank right now. Can we start with the number of kind of the 1-drop suite in this, Michael? Is that fair to you?
Sure.
So, when I think of like a Legion Landing, Pride of the Conqueror's deck, I want so many more 1-drops. I don't know about you guys, but like for me, the first thing that I would be doing in this deck is cutting Annoying Pouncers for more Legion's Landing and more Pride of the Conquerors. And that's because I love the way that this deck is built outside of that. Like, if there's anything this deck is doing well, it's being a deck that abuses that. And I want to abuse that in the best way that I can. And one of the cool things about Legion Landing is that having more Legion's Landing is okay because it flips your other one. And I want to be able to abuse that with my Dauntless Bodyguards and my Sky Marcher Aspirants.
Interesting.
That's my first thought.
Yeah, I agree. This deck has kind of gotten to an interesting spot with playing so many 3-drops.
Yeah, I would actually play one more. I think that the deck also wants a second Gideon.
Oh man, we're all going so different directions.
I just don't think you can play that many 3-drops.
Yeah.
So is it just History of Benalia that you feel that way? Like for me, I was like, I'll just cut a Harvester for a Gideon. Like, that was my first thought.
I want to cut the Harvester and the Gideon and all 3 Thopter Arrests.
That's what I want to do. So I think it was interesting because to me it looks like he's got like this mid-rangey white deck, and I think it could be a really good Pride of the Conqueror's deck like you talked about. But we have to like lower the mana cost of everything and get our Legion's Landing and our other low drops up. And I think cards like Knight of Grace is another one I would be wanting to move out of the deck.
So do you want to play more things like what's the
Expedition?
No, that's not. I mean, that is a card that works well, but I was actually thinking of the removal spell that costs 2 that exiles 3 or less creatures.
I don't want to main deck any of that.
I agree.
So how do you deal with things in your way, Michael?
By playing a bunch of tokens and going really wide.
Yeah, just going around.
By just going sideways again?
Yeah, I
Talk about that. Like, why is that your plan? Like, how does that work, like, in your mind?
I think that the problem is that you're still not actually going to be able to... I mean, we're playing 3 removal spells in a deck that mostly can't mulligan because it has no ways to generate card advantage. Like, I don't think that you're actually going to be able to... As a mid-range deck, this deck is woefully underpowered.
Mm-hmm.
I think playing like a Dorn Pouncer, Knight of Grace, and Angel Invention just as guys, and Thopter Arrests as your removal spells is just like a lot worse than what the more standard mid-rangey decks are doing.
Yeah.
And I think that you have to go harder in one direction, because right now I'm pretty convinced we've built a deck that doesn't beat anything.
Yeah, I think that we're really close to going the direction that I would want to go, kind of like we've all talked about, like this Pride of the Conqueror's aggro deck. And the thing is that you get a lot of benefit from like going wide and then casting something like History of Benalia. And so I want to abuse that. And, you know, whether it's Ceram's Expertise or, you know, some of these go wide cards, like, I want to make sure that I can finish games that way. You know, even Shepherd Dunes, right, is like doing that same thing where it's like really rewarding that go wide strategy. And I'd rather abuse that than try and figure out an in-between game.
I agree. I played a deck like this on Moto last night that played Chief of the Foundry, and they were playing more of this artifact cards and had Karn as well. But Chief of the Foundry is a 3-mana 2/3 that says other artifact creatures you control get +1/+1.
Pro Tour Kaladesh testing.
Yeah.
I think that I'm pretty happy to basically just play this deck with like 4 Dauntless Bodyguard, 4 Legions landing. Like, I think Dauntless Bodyguard being a knight makes History of Benalia probably good enough. And I think Benalish Marshal is quite good in this deck, so you're probably playing a few more lands than I was playing in like the last iterations of this deck.
Yeah. I mean, Scarmarcher Aspirant being a soldier instead of a knight is just like the saddest. Because if that was a knight too, like this, it'd be easy BBGG up in here.
Well, history counts for so much of the city's blessing. I didn't realize that till just now.
Yeah, it's very cute, and I think there were a bunch of decks from the PTQ this weekend. It only ever
counts for 2, right? It never counts for 3.
No, it does.
No.
Oh, because you get the city's blessing when the second one enters the battle. Okay, yeah. I see. So there is a turn where you can get city's blessing. That's a good call, Mason.
Yeah, you can also respond to the last triggered ability by casting Pride of Conquerors.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we're all in the go wide strategy. Is there anything that when you do that you want to adjust the sideboard for?
Yeah.
I mean,
oh, sorry, Mike.
I just don't really know what we're doing in the sideboard in general. I think the main advantage of playing more lands is that I would sideboard 4 Lyras, and then anytime my opponent is trying to punish me for playing token Z strategies, just go try to basically play just a 24 land mid-range deck.
Sure. Instead. And I think that's fair. You kind of get both game plans that you're trying to get, but you just do the other half in the sideboard, right? You move 2 Aethersphere or Harvester on the sideboard, maybe a couple of Lyras, you kind of increase your mid-range count for the sideboard, put your Gideons there, put your all that stuff there, and then kind of depending on the matchup, say all right, well, I'm going to go a little bit bigger here, or I'm going to stay low to the ground and just adjust my answers or put in answers. And that's where I would be at with my sideboard.
Yeah, I think that makes a little more sense overall.
I agree. I would move around the number of Gideon's intervention, too.
Yeah, I don't really know what we're trying to do with that card.
Well,
yeah, -4.
I've always disliked that card. Michael, do you feel the same way?
I don't think I've ever cast that card or had it cast against me, so I don't really know what we're trying to do with it.
I've cast it in Modern a lot. Yeah, the green-white Valley Town Todd Stevens deck plays in the sideboard as an answer to Valakut and weird combo decks. But yeah, I think the plan is to be you name Fumigate and then you name Sun and stuff like that. It's also just an on-white answer all. I don't think it's optimal in this deck, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, if we just think about the cards that we're moving from the main deck, right? So Gideon, Aethersphere, Harvester, stuff like that. That's going to take up your sideboard slots because you do want them in your 75. So and then we're obviously moving those Pride of the Conquerors to the main deck, things like that. Maybe you want some Baffling End somewhere in your 75, and kind of figuring out what that looks like and how your aggro deck can transform into a mid-range deck in certain matchups is where I would be, and it sounds like that's where Michael and Mason would be also.
Yeah, I have a question for you, Spencer. Do you like Baffling End still with the Exile clause over Seal Away?
In aggro decks, I do, right? Because they're not tapping their creatures against you if you're the beatdown. So I would much rather play Baffling End when I'm attacking than Seal Away.
Okay, alright. That's interesting.
I agree with that. It's also good against Constrictor.
Yeah, I in this deck, I want Baffling End. In a control deck, or maybe even another mid-range deck, I would rather have Seal Away. But it's in the context of how often am I the beatdown, and that's what you have to decide. And this deck is typically going to be the beatdown, so you're going to want Baffling End in those situations.
That's fair.
That seems reasonable to me as well.
Cool. Let's go on to our card of the week, which Mason decided that I'm giving out some Teferi, Hero of Dominaria. This card, for Team Constructor Criticism Worldwide, has been the thing we talked about. I think we identified pretty early on this was like the card from the set. The card just won the team open, and then I think had some in the top 8 of the PTQ as well, right?
Yeah, Autumn Perfume Combatants was a control deck with that, and she got 6th place playing Teferi. And then I know that other podcasts and other people, a lot have been talking about Teferi. So
yeah,
it's like the town.
This card is the real deal. It's like the best J/Ob Nixilis that we've gotten.
It's I'm play, by the way.
Yeah, I think this card is comfortably the best of those style of Planeswalkers that we've seen. I think that this card is good in blue-white control. I think it's good in Bant. I think it's like this card is the real deal. And honestly, like when I was making mid-range decks, or not mid-range decks, control decks last format, like this was the thing that I was like, man, I just wish that I had like any 5-mana dirtily Planeswalker. And this card isn't just dirtily. It's like it does everything that you need against Scarab God, against Hazard. It does it all. While also, untapping your mana for Seal Away. Like, this card plus Seal Away, I think, changed this format.
Yeah, I think without this card, blue-white control wouldn't be a deck. Even with Lyra, I think this card matters more.
I agree with that. I think you would have to play pretty different-looking blue-white decks.
Yeah. The Fairy is insane. I think it's the best card in Dominaria. So.
Why is this? Like, what is the difference between this and 5-mana Jace and Ob Nixilis that's so different, Michael?
I think just the fact that it plays so profitably with both counter magic and removal. I think the fact that we also actually have 2-mana removal.
So Seal Away, like I said, it did a lot for this for you.
Yeah, and I think like Negate and Essence Scatter, and then in addition, I think maybe even more than that. Just having the ability to commit to memory permanence is really powerful.
It's better than commit, right? Because it puts it 3 cards down.
Sure. I mean, if you can activate it, it's really nice. I think it's just a very powerful card in general. Like, we have 5-mana value Planeswalkers often, but this is a very good version of the 5-mana value Planeswalker.
Yeah, I think it also just contextually lines up really well, where it's like it takes up to 5, and if you sweeped with like Settle the Wreckage in the last turn, there's nothing with haste that kills it in the format that's played, and then its minus answers all the problematic cards. It's not like
I've been playing a ton of Bant approach, and one of the things that I noticed really early on is like Teferi was one of the best cards in my deck because of Seal Away. And then, in addition to that, the fact that, like, I could untap, like, a land with a gift on it and leave up 4 mana for, what is the sweeper that's instant speed? Yeah, Settle the Wreckage. Then they have to play around Settle the Wreckage and Fumigate at the same time with a Teferi in play. It's just kind of an impossible task for a lot of decks right now. Not that they won't ever be able to figure it out, but it's going to be really tough.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it gives you a lot of play, and like all the modes are good.
It basically wins the game by itself too, which is like weird for like a value Planeswalker, but it wins.
I mean, like the thing is that the card contextually lines up so well with the other cards in its deck that you don't think about. All the 5-mana Planeswalkers eventually win the game, right? Like, if you had an Obsidian or Jason play for, like, 4 turns, you were going to win that game. The thing is this card just complements your other cards so well. And maybe it has to do more with, like, Settle the Wreckage and Seal Away than it does with Teferi. But it's just so easy to protect in the context of this format.
Yeah.
Right. I agree with that.
Let's go on to our power rankings. So we're going to do kind of a longer episode. We're going to talk about the decks that were the top 5 decks for the weekend, and then just talk about some of the other decks. The first thing that we're going to bring up is the deck that actually won the online PTQ, and that's... Go ahead.
I was going to say, do you want to bring up where we got all the power ranking numbers for this weekend? Because we had a lot of tournaments.
Yeah, so we did the PTQ, the Classic, and the Open. So we don't actually typically include Open numbers when their team opens, but Star City Games has made a decision that they're just not doing standard opens anymore. And I decided that we were just going to include them because it is still data points, and I think that it's worth talking about. So the deck that won the online PTQ is the deck that we're going to talk about first. This deck is 4 Walking Ballista, 4 Llanowar, 4 Merfolk Branchwalker, 3 Shauna, 2 Rishkar, 3 Brontodon, 1 Shalia, 3 Lyra, 3 Karn, 2 Treasure Mech, 3 Aethersphere Harvester, 2 Sealaway, and 2 Ixalan's Binding. Is this the deck that won? Just to be clear.
I believe so. It is the deck that won.
Yes, it's the Treasure Map Shauna 1 Shalai. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to start with this by just talking about Shalai for a second. Because this card is really good. Like, this card in Lyra, I think, really put white mid-range decks in a different realm than they were before, that they just didn't have before.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think that Shalai is interesting. I like that it provides a little bit of protection from Settle the Wreckage, but it also just provides you with some kind of late-game inevitability. I think it's just a fairly good card in general. I don't know that it does anything, like, particularly crazy, but...
I mean, it beats up on Mono Red real good, but other than that, I kind of agree with you that it's just, like, a value card.
Yeah, just a pretty decent one in general, right?
Yeah.
It's a good one of.
Yeah, you don't want to draw a ton of them, but...
Yeah, I would almost increase the number to 2. When I was thinking about like these green-white mid-range decks, that was the first that I thought of. And I'm honestly not surprised that green-white mid-range comes out, right? Because like it's not a deck that people had played against recently. Like it's a brand new format. Like this is kind of within the realm of things that, like you can expect when you have these Lyra additions, right? Like when Baneslayer Angel and Llanowar Elves enter the format with other good green-white cards, it's not that surprising that the deck starts to do well right off the bat if nobody prepares for it.
Right. I definitely agree with that. And I think just like the level of value cards right now is really, really high.
Yeah, I agree. Everything's really value-oriented, and you're like ramping out 2 very powerful cards.
Definitely.
Yeah. This deck obviously has 3 Nissa in the sideboard, and then 3 Karn in the main. These are 2 really powerful Planeswalkers that everybody was really hyped on when they both came out. I'm a little surprised to see Karn in this style of deck, though.
I tested this deck a little bit, and the Karns were pretty outrageous.
Oh, really? Tell me about that.
They just provide so much as far as... I guess you have like a surprising amount of artifacts, and it's just a really good modal spell. I don't know if that quite sums it up well enough, but you just create... It puts a lot of pressure on your opponent. When you play it on an empty board, it's somewhere between like a value Planeswalker and kind of a Gideon ally of Zendikar. And
that's an
it synergizes really well with both Treasure Map, Walking Ballista. It synergizes really well with Shauna, Sisei's Legacy. And that you're and like just if you go -/, and you have any other artifact, you have like multiple 3/3s already. Yeah. If you ever flip a Treasure Map, you often have like multiple 7/7s.
I do like that I can like -/ in this mid-range deck, right? And like have a real threat if I already have another artifact in play, and then like start plussing right away. And it does a really good job of protecting itself in that way as long as you have other things. And I think that like Aethersphere Harvester fits really well into this deck, so that's a really good point.
Yeah, it's powerful and not it's like always castable off your Llanowar Elves mana. You can always ramp into it. I think that it just like does a lot of the little things that maybe you don't think about in a lot of other places really well.
Mason, what about you? What do you think of this deck, these cards, Karn? Like, what's going on here?
I think, I mean, hot take, Karn's good, but, that
actually is kind of a hot take. Like, people got really high on it to start and then just immediately kind of went low on it, and I'm not really sure what happened there.
I think the truth is, so, like, when you first saw Karn, everyone, was like, this card's insane, and then there were people like, it's not going to be that good. And I think the truth is, it's just good. Like, it's not broken, insane, or whatever, like Teferi. Like, Teferi is, like, really good and makes blue-white a deck. I don't think Karn's going to do anything like that for Standard, but I think this person really built around Karn. Like, I don't think you would see Treasure Map in this kind of deck without Karn, and it's interesting to see, like, just the raw power of all this and the synergy being rewarded.
It's kind of funny because when I first looked at this deck, it's actually funny. Gavin, one of our teammates, he's actually going to be in Salt Lake this weekend. He's going to come hang out at my house. So, Michael, come on over.
You're going to kill him in this room? Is that what you're doing?
I mean, I might let him sleep in a bed in this room, but I'm not going to kill him.
Gavin,
you're psycho.
Don't go down there. Stay upstairs, buddy.
But in all seriousness, yeah, Michael, maybe you don't come over, actually. But, you know, he texted us that his friend won this PTQ and sent us, you know, we saw the deck, and, like, at first it was like, man, this looks so bad. But as the format shook out, and as I saw the decks that were doing well, I was like, this deck is gas. Like, this person clearly understood what level 0 might be and how to beat it. And I'm really okay with this deck.
I mean, it's good at playing Lyra, and Lyra is really good.
Yeah. Can we go on to the next deck? This deck has 2.73% of the meta. We have Blue-White Historic, and this is my new. This is the pillar I will stand on. I don't know what it's called. The soapbox I will stand on. We have Blue-White Historic, and I think this deck is actually the worst deck I've ever seen.
I wouldn't go that far, but
you mean the hill you'll die on?
Yeah, this is this. You should literally never play this deck.
I played a Sacred Cat deck once, so I don't know if I can say that.
This deck is 10 times worse than Black-White tokens.
Wow, I feel like a weight lifted off my shoulders.
It's a hot take.
Go ahead, Mike.
I would say my biggest issue with I've seen a lot of these different decks, and there doesn't seem to be a standard list. My biggest issue in general is that the Wrath Capuchins, I think, both the Wrath Capuchins and the Torrential Gearhulk somehow end up being kind of underwhelming a lot of the time.
And the Walking Blood, like Merfolk Trickster, like the whole deck is like, oh my gosh.
So the card that I actively dislike is Wrath. I don't like any build that has Wrath at 4, just full stop. So, like, that's my biggest problem with the deck is I'm playing a 4-mana 3/3 flash to sometimes make
people
my
are
cards that are good already good.
People are 5-0ing with this deck. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I understand that people are playing this at the team series. They're 5-0ing with it. Like, things are happening. But, like, dude, this is so bad.
I played a version of this deck that was like, so in the sideboard you'll see these decks. They normally go a little bit bigger, and they basically had pre-boarded main deck. So they were playing some Sycopates and Supreme Wills. And while I didn't love the Sycopates in the deck and that kind of stuff, and it didn't have Merfolk Trickster, so it was a bigger package. You know, essentially how you look at this.
Cutting Merfolk Trickster is, like, literally the first thing that I would do.
Yeah, so you do that, and then you cut Wizard's Retort because you're down on that. You want to play more powerful cards. In that version, I liked a little bit more, and I imagine somewhere between these two decks is where it will finally land.
But at that point, like, why aren't you going all the way to Blue-White Control? Like, what matchup is better for you with this deck than just plain Blue-White Control?
I'm trying to think of all the decks in Standard because there are so many, which we'll get to as the night goes on. But I felt pretty good against, like, the green decks, but I feel pretty good against them as the control decks.
Right, you already have probably main deck Fumigate, main deck Cellular Wreckage against.
I would imagine this deck is good against Blue-White Control.
Because of Merfolk Trickster?
No, because of Wrath Capuchin and History of Benalia. That would be my guess. You're
specifically better in the mirror and then worse against everything else. I don't know that that's where I want to be.
It depends. I mean, I haven't played with this enough to really say, like, beyond a shadow of a doubt where, you know,
where it sits.
Where it sits.
No, and I haven't either. Like, this is, like I said, this is how I die on blindly. Like, I just have blindfold on here. This is, but when I look at this deck, I'm like, this is a madman's dream. And I'm just not about this dream, guys.
Have you seen the Esper versions of this deck any?
I have, and I actually like them better.
Yeah, I really like the card Fatal Push in the format right now, so that might be where my thing's coming from. But I think the Esper version, you cut a lot of the Q cards. You have to still play the flash element of the deck, but you're not playing cards like Wizard's Retort, Morphoc Trickster. You're playing less of these other cards I'm just not super excited for, but you get to play all the good ones. You still get to play the Sealway, the Gear Hulk, the Teferis, and you also get to play Scarab God, Fatal Push, and everything that goes along with that. Glint-Sleeve Siphoner, Champion of Wits. So, yeah.
Yeah, something to consider. There are a lot of builds somewhere in this ballpark, right?
Yeah.
And it's really hard to say what is the correct thing to be doing.
So, the next deck that we have on this list is Red-Black Aggro. And I am so happy. This is a deck that I thought would be playable for such a long time. Like, if you look at this deck on the screen, I might have brewed this deck within a few cards like 7 times.
Yeah,
Michael, what is happening?
It's just kind of like... It's just like a medium stuff deck. I mean, I think the best thing about it is that your sideboard is good and it's easy to go up or down. And that's a lot of the time where you're looking to be in...
It's kind of like everything that I really liked about Mardu aggro back in the day, without having to play Heart of Kiran, which kind of sucks and is good right now. We'll get into that later.
Yeah.
No, I think it's both. I think I actually think Heart of Kiran is the weirdest card in Standard right now, but we'll probably get into that later.
Yeah.
Like, this deck just does a lot of things really well. Bomat Courier, for one, despite the fact that Goblin Chainwheeler exists, I think Bomat Courier has not been better and also not been worse in a long time. There's a lot of really weird cards in Standard because of the way this format's shaking out because of how wide it is. But, like, I like Bomat Courier, I like Inventor's Apprentice, I like Aethersphere Harvester. Like, I like a lot of this deck, guys.
Yeah. There's a lot to like about it. I think it's a good, aggressive deck that can go bigger in the board. It's, like you said, a lot like Mardu back in the day. It is worth noting, though, so originally we had the power rankings and Spencer's like, Mason, go ahead, throw in the Team Open. This deck wasn't even close to near the top with the Classic and the PTQ results. This deck rode to the top off the Team Open. So,
oh yeah, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 of them that did well at the Team Open.
This deck had like 4 points before, and it's sitting at like 18 points now.
Yeah. To be fair though, if you look at the GP right before the format switch, there was also 4 of them that did well at the GP right before the switch. So like, it's not like it's new.
There is some reason to think this deck is good.
Yeah, I think that if you kind of combine the Team Open with the GP, it actually makes sense. Like, this deck might actually just be the real deal, and kind of a more reasonable way to go. I know that the deck that did really well at the GP was kind of more aggressive than this, and this is a little bit closer to, like, Jerry Thompson's build, but I don't see any reason to believe this deck isn't just actually good. Michael, why don't you go...
I was going to say, I think this deck is really good. I was supposed to play this Open, and then our team fell through, but this was the deck we were going to play. So...
why did you want to play this?
So first we wanted to be aggressive in the first week of the format, and this was a deck that could be aggressive but also go kind of mid-rangey. And we were going to play some of the cards that we thought were good from the new set, like Phyrexian Scriptures and Karn. Phyrexian Scriptures hasn't played out super well. It's pretty good, actually, surprisingly, against Godfarer's Gift. That's another day conversation. But yeah, we were going to play a deck pretty much like 72 of the 75, so...
That seems reasonable to me. Yeah, I think this whole shell is good, and like I think one of the things that I like about it is you just get a lot of control over the exact... Like, this is a deck that rewards you for having a very specific plan, and you can make pretty nuanced decisions about how you want your deck to play, like pre- and post-board in different matchups, and I think that that's just like a powerful place to be in general.
Yeah, one of the places that I really like to be in this format, so there are kind of, one of the cards that I really like in the format is Walking Ballista, and so in kind of like brewing decks and stuff like that, I've had Walking Ballista ramp decks, I've had like green-black snake decks with Walking Ballista, and then I even have looked at some of these red-black aggro decks, and I think that Walking Ballista is in a really good spot, and this deck specifically gets to really abuse the fact that Walking Ballista is Walking Ballista, right? Unlicensed Disintegration was a card that we talked about banning a year ago. And the fact that, like, you get to play, like, Inventor's Apprentice, Walking Ballista, and Unlicensed Disintegration in the same deck, while also, getting to ramp it out, like, ramping out big ones with Chandra, it kind of fits really well.
I agree. I just think being able to be like lean when you want to be lean and big when you want to be big is really powerful, and there are not a lot of decks that get to do that.
When I look at the deck on the screen, like the only thing that I see that like I'm like, man, I really don't know about this is like just changing that Chandra in the board for another Glorybringer, and I might just run this exact 74 outside of that.
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about the complaints about a deck being like
one card off,
it's one card off in the 75. That's kind of the dream.
It's like this might be where I want to be. So the next deck that we have coming in at 6.82% of the meta online is Mono Red Aggro. Okay. I don't know did you guys talk about Chainwhirler last week?
I don't think so. We didn't talk a whole lot about Standard last week, did we, Michael? I don't think so.
I don't think we talked about it too much.
Yeah, Modern last week.
So the list on the screen is 23 Mountains. So this deck is like all in on Chainwhirler, and I don't actually think it's unreasonable to just like call this the level 0 deck and be set with it. I think this deck is very good. I think that it's playing a little too few 1-drops for where I'd want to be with Mono Red, but outside of that, I'm totally okay with this being the level 0 deck and saying like, if you can't beat this, you're in trouble.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Mono Red is just like, it's just good.
Yeah,
I don't know that it's thrilling, but it's good.
Yeah, like on your screen, if you just cut an Archive Crasher and something else for 2 more 1-drops, I don't even care what they are. I don't care if they're the Rigging Runners. I don't care if they're the 1/1 that has haste that deals 1. If you just get 10 1-drops in this deck to like increase your Hazoret draws, I'm all about this being like a level 0 deck where like you take this to a PPTQ, you have a good chance of top 8ing, and if you play well, you're gonna win. Like,
yep, it'll be one of the 10 best decks in the room.
Oh, right? easily, and like that right now at the beginning of a format is where I want to be, Michael.
I agree. I think that just like while other people are trying to figure out, nuanced boarding plans, and you're just saying, I'm gonna jam Mono Red, and it's going to be a bad time for you. I think there's a lot to that.
Yeah. Mason, you had something to say?
Well, I was going to say, it's interesting to me. So we talk about a lot how Moto... Well, a lot of people talk about how Moto is like ahead of the metagame, and it's like a week or so ahead. And once again, this deck, much like Red-Black, got all of its points to be on here, basically, from the SCG team part of the Open. The Classic and the PTQ had almost no Mono Red. I think there were like 2 in those 2 whole top 32s. So it's interesting to me to see how Moto has been adapting to this deck. And I think this deck has a lot of bad matchups, actually. Like, I don't think your green-white matchup is particularly good.
Oh, it's terrible. Your green-white matchup's really bad.
Yeah, I don't think your blue-white matchup's very good. I don't think your blue-white control matchup's very good. I don't think your mono-green matchup's very good. I don't think your black-white matchup is good. I think your mono-white tokens is good because you're Whirler, but there's a lot of decks where I think you have a bad matchup.
I think your black-white matchup, if you increase your 1-drops and like make yourself like a Chainwhirler tempo deck against them, actually could be really good. I think that as far as like blue-white flash, like I don't actually care about that deck. That deck can be a bad matchup for me all I want. Other people are going to beat that deck because it's bad. I think that when I say level 0 deck, I mean level 0 deck, right? Like, this is the question you have to answer day 1, and now we're in day 2. And if you don't answer your day 1 question, you're also not probably going to be able to answer your day 2 question. Leveling the metagame is really important. Like I said, I would increase the number of 1-drops in this deck because I want to continue asking questions, not slow down.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. I don't know. I'm going to be honest. I don't really know if I want more Rigging Runners and Fanatical Firebrands. I need to play it to know for sure. The decks that I'm afraid of playing against this deck, they all just seem like generally good matchups, and maybe going slightly lower, so making sure Hazard always attacks on 4 and you get that extra chip shot matters.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying is I want to activate my Hazarets because, I need to. I do think that the Soulscar Mage draws where you get to like kill a dude or like shrink a dude and then play Chain Whirler, you probably do win those games against Green White. However, the matchup is really bad for you. Now, against Blue White Flash, it's whatever. Like, I don't actually know how they're beating you. If you're saying it's a bad matchup, I believe you. It seems like you're going under them in multiple ways, and you have every card in your deck kills all of their good cards. Like, I don't actually know how they beat you, so I'm a little surprised.
Game 1 is pretty rough, and then Game 2 you get Lyra and stuff like that, and you get to clean up the matchup a good bit, and they don't get to bring a whole lot to the table. And my sample size is fairly small at that, so keep that as it will. But I also just
can you just bring in Fight with Fire against that deck though?
Fight with Fire. I'm sorry. What does that card do again? I don't quite remember.
It's 3 mana, deal 5. There's 3 of them in this sideboard.
Fairly effective in that matchup.
Yeah.
It could be wrong.
Yeah, I hadn't encountered that card yet in the matchup, and maybe that's the trick to like turn the tides or whatever. But I think there's more than just the decks we're talking about. I think we're gonna bring it up more as we go on because we have a lot of decks that like have points and didn't get on screen. So
sure. So this is interesting. Michael and I are pretty big fans of this, and Mason feels like it. It isn't doing.
I just don't.
Yeah.
I think it's very much like you could play this weekend at PPTQ and do well, but I think like after this weekend, unless the meta really rotates, where you're like seen as on top of it, and it just happens to be good right now at that time. I think it's not exactly where I would want to be personally.
And that's fair.
Yeah,
I mean, I
absolutely.
think there's a lot to be said for knowing what you want, and yeah.
Coming in at number 1, we have Blue-White Control. So I'm not surprised that this deck did well. We kind of talked a little bit about Teferi earlier. I'm surprised at the list that won. I think that there's like a lot of things that I would change in the list that won, but overall as an archetype, I think this deck just like got the most. But like I think I kind of tweeted I don't know if I tweeted this today or yesterday. It might have been 2 days ago that I just was like testing Standard and I was like, guys, Siluwe is like
it's just really good. Yeah, and it's low key good. Like you don't have to try hard to enable it. It works so well with Teferi. It's just good in the kind of low effort way that typically
One thing that I do like about Rudy's list is that he wasn't like trying to do like sensor stuff. He was just like, no, I'm just gonna play like 1 negate, 3 Essence Scatter. I really appreciate that. Like I've noticed that like a lot of people are like trying to jam like syncopates and like sensors, and I'm just not about that at this point. I think that your package that you can play is so much better than that I'd rather just be playing a good overall package.
I think Teferi really helps with that. Where before I felt like maybe you need to get them or have like these weird kind of like sensory draws sometimes the decks would play. And you're trying to win with cards like Approach too, so like sometimes that comes up. Which to be fair, also about 10 points of the 24 whatever is Approach of this, but it's really like Teferi control we're talking about with this report.
No. Yeah. They're straight up Blue-White Control with, but I think Teferi helps the Approach deck. Like you and I, Mason, we're on Ban Approach, right? And it's like Teferi's like one of the best cards on our deck because it, like, GG, bro. Like, you can't actually attack me and Teferi at the same time and consistently win the game. It's too hard. It's too much to ask for with Seal Away and Wrath effects.
Yeah, no,
like,
I agree. What I was saying was I was clarifying for the audience that the
sure.
Control, we put Sun and that, but it's really like
that's okay.
Teferi is like our deck we're talking about.
Right, right.
But I think that I wasn't saying that you were disagreeing with me. I was saying that like that overall Teferi plus Wrath effects and then however you want to win the game plus Seal Away is like is probably the level 1 deck, right? We talked about Mono Red being the level 0 deck. I think that has become level 1 where it's like, okay, how am I beating this? Like I have to beat Mono Red and these aggro decks, but I also have to beat this top end of this Blue-White deck that might have Torrential Clearhulk and might have Approach to the Second Sun, but like I definitely know it has Teferi and Seal Away and some number of counter spells.
Yeah, I've just found Teferi in general, it comes out on a pretty high loyalty, it answers problematic permanents, and Seal Away is just very good against basically every aggressive card in this format. Plus, then there's sort of the dilemma always with these style of decks. Like, they have access to Lyra, but if you don't see it in the game, how much removal do you want to play in your deck, that kind of stuff, versus how many negates do you want. Like, it's just very easy to get caught in between against decks like this.
That's why you play Crushing Canopy in your mono green Stompy deck.
I actually was texting a podcast listener that was texting me about a deck, and I was like, dude, Crushing Canopy might be like the secret tech right now in Standard. Between Seal Away, Cast Out, History, some of the flyers that you might run into.
And Lyra, mostly just Lyra. I mean, it's just very good against any of the base white decks.
Lyra, like, it's just, it might be like the tech right now. Some of the other decks that are off this list, right? There's 3 different types of Godpharaoh gift decks, as well as the deck that was number 1 on Moto until this weekend, Green Red Monsters and Green Red Dinosaurs. Where are you guys at? Oh, also, surprisingly, no Snake decks, even though Snake was the number 1 deck on MTGO this week.
No, there was Snake. They're on there. They're all up in the mix. There's a green black.
No. I'm saying not on the top 5, right?
Oh, not on the top 5. Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
My bad.
No, it's okay. But like the decks that I think of in the Standard format, like, are these 5 decks minus the blue-white flash deck, and then like for me, it's green-white Snake, it's Godpharaoh deck, Godpharaoh's gift decks, and then it's probably some kind of monsters deck. And I think that those 3 decks plus 4 of these decks are like these 7 decks in the format. Like if I was building a gauntlet, that's kind of where I'd start.
I agree. I think you're somewhere in that ballpark at least. I think that, like, realistically, there are probably more decks than just this that exist. I mean, we haven't even talked about any of the Godpharaoh's gift decks, anything like that. Like
that's what I'm saying. Like, yeah, I would if I'm building a gauntlet, I have Godpharaoh's gift decks, I have Snake decks, and then I have those monsters decks plus 4 of these 5 decks, because you like.
And frankly, there's even more than this, right?
Oh yeah, like
these
Black,
are just
White,
the decks that you're 100% sure are good.
Yeah, Black White is probably a deck in some capacity. It is likely that there are other decks that I can't even think of right now. Mason, what about you? Are there other decks that you like? If you're building a gauntlet that I didn't mention, that you would be considering?
That you didn't mention. I think the only other one that I think might be a deck that we haven't seen put up any results is Tokens, but I think the amount of cast outs we have right now makes Tokens not great. It's hard for you to get the engine going against a lot of these decks, and Teferi also interacts with your pieces very well. But
yeah, Teferi bouncing those 4-mana enchantments is just rough for you.
Yeah. I agree.
It kind of reminds me of like how good Vraska was against that deck, where like before the green-black decks were playing Vraska, green-black was like one of your best matchups, and once they started playing Vraska, it was like, I actually can't beat this deck. Like, I go so late that they're going to draw their Vraska, they blow up 2 of my token like synergy pieces, and the game's over. And Teferi just does the same thing.
I agree.
Yeah.
Except
that it is like much more ubiquitous.
Yeah. One deck that none of us kind of thought of here, that maybe we should cover before we wrap this up is, where do you guys sit with mono green? Do you want monuments? Do you not want monuments? Is the deck just fake? Like, where are we at with this?
I mean, it did really well in the PTQ this weekend, but it's kind of hard to say.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So, like I talked about the red and red-black bumping decks, the 2 decks that would have taken its place in 4th and 5th, respectively, are the mono-white tokens deck and green monument. Specifically, I think it was green-black monument, but I like green-blue monument personally a bit more. I think it's a pretty good deck. I thought you had actually mentioned it, so I didn't.
I didn't mention it, but I do think that like Llanowar Elves plus monument is a real thing.
Yeah, it's weird because we talked about monument last Tuesday, I think it was, in the monument deck, and I was pretty pro it. And I think I still am, but I think I'm down to like 2 monuments if I'm going to play the deck. Those are like pretty dead draws, and it seems like every time I'm playing against that deck, if it ever stumbles, it loses, which I'm not a pretty big fan of. But that also could just be the decks I've been playing against it. So
it's so hard to say. I mean, it obviously if it stumbles, it loses, but it's also playing a bunch of Galtas or whatever. So when it doesn't stumble, it plays a 12/12 on turn 4 a bunch of the time. Like,
it's true.
Yeah, it's really funny. I've obviously played a lot of the Dinosaurs deck, so kind of in a similar vein, it's like when I don't stumble, you actually can't win.
Right.
And then when, if I play like a Regisaur Alpha into a Galta, I'm like, you're just not winning that game. I don't care what deck you are. Like, that's just not a game you're winning. And I think that Mono Green Stompy kind of does the same thing, where it's like, if I go Llanowar Elf into Monument, like, my entire hand costs no mana, right? Because I already have this Mana Ramper in play, I already have this Monument in play, the game's over. And, like, the games where you're disrupted, or the games where you fall apart, they look like non-games. And those kind of decks, people kind of like to be on, like, one end or the other of. And I think the truth is that it's often pretty close to the middle, right? Where it's like, yeah, sometimes I fall apart, but, like, that's true of every deck.
I think they go against a lot of people's personal preference, but I think that, like, obviously the decks are doing something powerful, right?
Yeah. So that is it for this week, kind of covering what's going on in Standard right now, getting you ready for your PPTQs. With that being said, guys, you're playing a PPTQ tomorrow, Michael Hinderocker, because you unfortunately lost silver for some reason. What are you playing?
I think if I had to play one tomorrow, I would probably play, like, I think I would play Mono Red because I think my control matchup is good.
Cool. Mason, what would you play?
I would play Sultai Snake because I think my Mono Red matchup is good, and I think my control matchup is good, and my deck is proactive.
Yeah. This one's really hard for me. I'm kind of all over the place, but I think that I would either play Green Black Snake or Green Red Monsters. Or, sorry, Green Red Dinos is kind of where I'm at, but it wouldn't be that hard to convince me to play Bant.
Bant Sun? So. I just have to, like, slide you at, like, a slightly more tuned list, and you're like, I do like
Bant Sun. Yeah, if you just give me less of those bad...
Those bad Sealaways that you have too many of in Essence Scatter.
No.
And then just put
more No.
The
opposite of that. Do the opposite of that. No, but I like also if you're playing monsters, play Elf. If you're playing dinosaurs, play Drover. I know that it looks like you want to play Elf because of all the 3-drops in dinos, but it's not worth the 1/1. Like, I know it looks like it. I'm just giving my thoughts on this. I promise.
Interesting.
It looks like it wants to be Elf, but I did test it and it wasn't as good. Kind of weird, but that's just my opinion.
It's surprising to me, but obviously I haven't played it at all, so I would say yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it's really hard. It's really hard all the time to be like. It's hard to play enough games that when you have something like a hot take to be more than like, hey, just, this is what I think.
Yeah, that's what all hot takes are, right? It's just you saying it with like a confident backbone. Like, yep.
Yeah. All right, where can people find you, Michael?
You can find me on Facebook. My name is Michael Hinderocker. You can also find me on Twitter at MagicMikeMTG.
You can find me on Twitter at Spencer13H. You can find me on Facebook at Spencer Stephen Howland. You can find me every week on Constructive Criticism and Limited Time Only. Mason, where can people find you?
You can find me everywhere at Mason E. Clark or Mason Clark at that branding. You can find me on Twitter, Facebook, Magic Online. There you are. That's actually how we got this Deck Doctor. Was someone messaged me on Magic Online. I was like, hey, go post on the Constructive Criticism family. So,
woo!
There you go.
Yeah!
Easy.
You can find me in Magic Online, Spencer13 Dev. You can find Quentin, that's Earthstripe, that's URTHSTYRPE. If you message either of us, we can add you to the clan. You can find the podcast every week on mtgcast.com, YouTube, Constructive Criticism, as well as the Mana Base. Thank you, everybody, so much for listening. You can tweet at us with #WhatTheBigGood. #WhatTheBigGood is our Twitter program. If you tweet it, we will read it. This week, we will start with... Is it the Sealaway tweet? Or no, it's Mason's tweet, right? It's Eggroll.
Yeah, so I think technically it is the Eggroll tweet.
Yeah, so it's a picture of Eggroll. So Eggroll is a beautiful dog. He's reading a wonderful book, and he's telling you to listen to CCMTG, and I think that would be good. Yeah,
Eggroll's a big fan. He loves it. He's always nearby when we're recording. He always wants to meet Spencer and Michael.
Richard asks, is it too late to send you my info for tokens to Mason. It is not too late. Mason hasn't sent me any info, so tokens have not gone out to previous patrons. If you've been a patron in the podcast in the past and want some tokens, please message Mason, and we will send them out with the next month's tokens. Yeah. We will get that done.
But you missed the important part of that tweet. The reason I tweeted is he asked, is it too late to send the tokens? And I said, it's never too late, much like ordering from Oasis Games. And then my tweet said, I only have one mode, shameless plug mode. So there you go. All
right. Yeah. Silhouette is good. This has been a public service announcement. Hashtag MTG, hashtag would be good. It's really good, guys.
Yeah.
Like we kind of talked about it in the podcast, but you guys, it's the real deal. Scotty says, how do you feel about old 8-rack lists with Ensnaring Bridge in the current meta? Barring Boggles, it seems strong right now. Please tell me I'm crazy. I can't play 8-rack, dude.
Your Boggle matchup is good. What are you talking about?
Like, you have no good matchups. Don't listen to him. I
got 8-rack right over here. I can touch it.
I literally can't play this deck. I don't have a valid opinion because I think the deck is awful.
I agree. I just wouldn't play 8-rack.
I'm gonna say 2.
You don't hate yourself that much.
1, your Boggle matchup is great, and 2, cowards can't block warriors. Move on to the next one.
Haven't been playing MTG recently. Saw this U-White Flash deck. It looks terrible. Is Green-Black Snake better than Sultai Snake with these new lands? I already answered 1. I don't know on 2. I saw some Green-Black lists that I really liked, so that's what I'm trying. But I already felt like I was missing Hydra when I was building these decks. So I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, Hadana's Climb is also just good.
Yeah, right? I feel like Hadana's Climb fixes the snake problem of like really needing snake, and Hydra is very powerful at it's very good in the current format. The only real bad cards are the sweepers. They're just good against creatures, so
yeah, it's hard to say. I obviously would rather not be playing blue if I don't have to be playing blue, because I think the green-black cards are really good. But I don't know the answer to this question, and I don't think we'll know for a couple weeks.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, I think it's a little dependent on how much people are playing Scarab God specifically, because that was really the card that Hadana's Climb was invalidating. I saw some straight green-black lists with a bunch of Ravenous Chupacabras, which
that's what I'm doing, yeah.
Right. I think I saw a list from Steve Mann playing 4 in the main deck, and if people are playing less Hazarets because of more Seal-Aways and more Lyras, it kind of makes sense that you're not really one-shotting people in the air very much. So maybe straight green-black could make more sense for some period of time. It's really just hard to say. I think a lot of it's just metagame dependent.
Yeah. Mason, the next... this is offensive.
Also this keeping up with at CCMTG, it seems like Spencer takes a lot, all capital there, of Magic breaks. How does he continue to qualify for the RPTs without playing Magic? Hashtag would that be good?
Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
I'm very into qualifying for events without
playing. Also in the mailbag episode for next week, so if you want to tease it and talk about it later. The first PPTQ of every season and dunk on it.
Shut up.
Heyo.
Okay, so here's the deal. I do win a lot of the first PPTQs. And it does... I mean, I literally am sweating 2 buys because of the exact thing that Bob is talking about. I think the honest truth is, I don't have time to be a Silver Pro. I just don't have the time. But I think that I'm good enough to be a Silver Pro. Do I sound conceited right now?
Not unless you finish this story badly. So I'll tell you afterwards. Keep talking.
I don't have 20 hours of Magic in me a week, and I think that if I did, I would win a lot of matches of Magic. But it's not in my I want to provide for my family. I want to do this podcast. I just haven't prioritized other stuff. But I think that it's so, and maybe we'll get into this during the mailbag episode. But I think that the truth is that at some point you've mastered certain things, and we talk about always improving, right? Because once you build pillars, like, it's like a platform that you stand on. It's not even pillars. It's like, I'm going to build this level of this platform, then I'm going to build on top of that, then I'm going to build on top of that, then I'm going to build on top of that. And, you know, one of the reasons that sealed is one of my favorite formats is because I have those platforms in place, and so I can build a sealed deck. I can look at a sealed pool, understand the sealed format, and then be like, okay, well, I didn't need to play a lot of Magic to understand how games are going to work out. And then if I was wrong, I can just adjust my deck on the fly in sideboard. And that's how I'm doing PPTQs right now, guys. Like, I don't know what else to tell you.
Well,
do I sound
right?
Do I sound stupid, Michael?
I think basically, if you are good enough to consistently win PPTQs, you generally don't have to play very many of them.
Yeah. But we'll get into this question in depth in the mailbag episode. We'll talk about it a little bit more. I said RPTQ planning is going great. I don't know if anybody listening watches the league. Chris said that he wanted to drive, and then Quentin and I both said he could drive. I then let Chris know he could also pay for all costs for the entire trip. Quentin said that is cool, and then I tweeted a video of it's decided from the league. So, yeah. Mason, why don't you read the next one?
The next tweet is, when @Mason Clark asks for a picture of your giant tub, but he specifically for you not to be in the picture, we can't always get what we want, and then Spencer's foot's in the tub. First off, Spencer, you want to sound conceited? That tub's not even that big, man. Second off,
dude, I can literally sit Indian style in every direction in that tub.
Well, that's only okay. Sure, you got me there. I'm gonna say the reason I asked him for not to send it is he once said I'm in the shower. I said lol, and then I got a picture of Spencer in the shower. So now I have to.
That's not what happened.
That's
You're misrepresenting. I literally sent you a picture of my shower head
tweets
at me.
That's Mr. Helen tweets. Doing some MTG Arena Daily stuff on the @HeezyGamingMedia Twitch, @twitch.tv/HeezyGamingMedia. Shortly, #MTG, #would that be good. And then there's a link to the Twitch. You know.
I only lost 2 games and I completed all my quests really fast.
I got a problem for you though, Spencer. You didn't host it with the CC channel. You didn't funnel your viewers that way.
I didn't.
That's bad marketing. So
it is bad marketing. # could be better.
Yep.
Thank you everybody for listening. I was really excited to be back this week. I really enjoyed this week's episode. Thank you everybody for listening. We'll see you guys all next week. Don't forget to check out Nikachu the Mason Slayer, and don't forget to check out our sponsors, as well as patreon.com/CCMTG. Bye everybody.
See ya.
You know, Spencer, I hope we get paid.